I'll start with a quote that will serve as our reading, and it is by Linda Schneider and Carolyn Rincolato in their exploration into the origins of queer theologies. They had this to say, quote, "Queer exposes the instability of all sexual identities, including the heterosexual. It allows for greater fluidity, multiplicity, and change. Queer is therefore a word used by those who want to be outside of, to be in between, and beyond the categories provided by oppressive binary thinking about gender and sex, and I would add just about anything else. It not only destabilizes lesbian and gay identities, but also destabilizes heterosexuality. Even the act of defining queer is difficult. Doing so brings queer in and domesticates it, rendering queer no longer outside of anything." End quote. To queer something, then, with this quote in mind, could mean to shake up our ideas about what is normal, normal being a highly problematic construct that creates both insiders and outsiders in a single breath. But instead, it could replace them with a worldview that allows for the spaciousness of learning, of curiosity, of surprise and wonder. To defy rigidity and control, and to celebrate each other as creative sparks of the divine, capable of more wholeness and variety than our current mainstream hyper-capitalist society is designed to encompass. Today, I'm offering queering in 3 parts. First, part 1, queering the body-mind. My spiritual director and I sometimes engage with the spiritual elements of my relationship to my own body, especially considering the mysterious maladies and sensitivities of my body that, shall we say, complexify my physical experience. I have tried to have gratitude for my body, to honor its hard work, and to appreciate its form and function, its vitality. These gratitudes are sometimes grudging and infrequent, but there is that in me that recognizes that the gratitude is preferable to, well, the alternatives. I realized this one day, that I had been holding my body to too rigid a set of standards, and in the process, treating it as not me, almost even not mine. As well, it was an it, an other. I had let it, my own body, become a stranger to me. We had become estranged, my body and I hadn't even realized it. In the book Braiding Sweetgrass, Robin Wall Kimmerer offers the pronoun kin, inspired by Potawatomi knowledge and animism. It's an alternative to it. Kin is suitable for all other beings that we might otherwise refer to as it, like a turtle or a tree or a river. And it is easy to mistake for a natural resource. And it can be objectified and othered. Try this on for size. Oh, look, they're clear-cutting kin for another cattle farm. The pollution is so bad near the lake that we can't go swimming in kin. It's a little disturbing, yes? Kin, as a pronoun, queers that objectification. It queers that itness and requires us to hold all beings as containers of divine spark, as aspects of sacred all. I had been thinking of my own body as an it instead of as kin. And in that moment of personal revelation, my whole relationship to and with my body reoriented. I wasn't suddenly and miraculously cured of what ails me, but I do now feel more able to relate to my body as kin. I feel oddly closer to kin. I opened to feeling the warmth and receptivity that came so easily for trees and turtles and rivers, but not so much for my own body. I offer this prayer by Cole Arthur Riley called For Worth. God in us, we know the miracle inherent in our existence. We are here, our beauty stretching out and dwelling within us. But it is hard to believe in one's dignity when the systems and societies to which we belong are content to destroy us. We have heard lies of our worthlessness and the explicit and the implicit ways the world interacts with our bodies, stories, and homes. It is incessant. This lie of our own inadequacy, this charade of our inferiority, reminds us that our dignity does not wane or bud in relation to anyone's belief in it, including our own. Let us rest with the knowledge that we have nothing to prove. Our dignity, perpetual as it is divine, we will not shrink. We expand. Remind us of our making, for we too contain the divine. Amen. Part 2. Queering religion. Indigenous American theologian and scholar Vine Deloria Jr. had this to say, quote, "Religion is for people who are afraid of going to hell. Spirituality is for those who have been there." Now, if I'm being generous, I'd like to think that the purpose of religion throughout history, I mean its intention, has been to try and help and nurture and nourish as many people as possible. The problem with trying to help as many people as possible, especially in a world where cultures are speeding up and populations are expanding and the myth of eternal progress reigns, is that the reach starts to be more important than the people. In this, religion as an institution makes itself vulnerable to corruption, vulnerable to the influence of those who would abuse power and authority, whether intentionally or unintentionally. This turns salvation into domination, redemption into a tool of control. Now, most of the prophets and sages and spiritual rebels throughout history are those we turn to for wisdom precisely because of their rejection of these abuses. Buddha rejected the sequestered innocence afforded by his wealth and privilege to seek deeper, more painful and abiding truths. Jesus was a radical who criticized the systems of a type of Judaism that lived the letter, but not the spirit, of Jewish law. In this and many other cases, the wisdom of the ages arose from the impetus to queer the way things were. Now, I'm not a Christian, but I'm down with some table-flipping Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Matthew 25:40 from the Christian scriptures says, "Whatever you did for one of the least of us, you did for me." A spiritually informed religion is one that constantly calls our attention to wholeness for all, even where fear and profit have relied on the creation of an exploitable out-group and a margin to push them to. Queering religion, then, has always been about getting back to essentials, recalling impact instead of glossing things over with good intentions, getting uncomfortably honest with the impact of our actions and not just letting ourselves glide our way into heaven on the strengths of our thoughts and prayers, or wherever you think happens after we die. We as Unitarian Universalists are called to live into the challenge of our day by leaning on that wisdom and that impetus to recall to essentials, by pulling ourselves and each other into thriving, by centering love, period. Another prayer from Cole Arthur Riley for a justice system that cannot be trusted. God, awake. We are grateful that your love cannot be separated from truth-telling and justice. For too long, we have known complacency and subjugation masquerading as love. Move us toward communities who are capable of the real thing. Raise up leaders whose spirits can kneel. May all those who've been pushed to the margins rise up and receive what has been stolen from them. May the wealthy contend with the utter void in their own interior worlds that causes them to devour resources and people in hopes of satiating an unfathomable greed. And God, reveal yourself as near to the brokenhearted, the suffering, the imprisoned, the impoverished, and unloved. Make us agents of true restoration in the entire world, that we commit ourselves to dismembering the schemes of injustice in which love is never complicit. Amen. Part 3, Queering the Community. So how do we bring these ideas home? How do we weave them together? My own ministries rely on the creation of containers to that voracious hunger, that unfathomable greed that has no natural predators and no upper limit. What might that container be? It might surprise you, and it's more accessible than you might think. Let me set the stage with a story. A few years ago, I played the role of Joseph in my home congregation's no rehearsal Christmas pageant. Is everyone familiar with the no rehearsal Christmas pageant? It's about what it sounds like from the title. You get a bunch of people from the congregation, there's no rehearsal, and there's a narrator, you put costumes on, and you run around, and it's chaos, and it's delightful. But I volunteered for that part in particular, first of all, because I adore gender-bending traditional roles, but I was also inspired to do a little something extra that day. Now, after securing the consent of the pageant's director and the minister, I made a sign that I hid on stage during the production and then held up for all to see during our closing hymn. Now, I, as Joseph, held up a sign that read, "God's Metamor." Now, for those who may not be familiar with this word, metamor is a term from polyamory and ethical non-monogamy circles that gives a name to and therefore defines a relationship between you and your lover's other lovers. Let me put it this way. If Betty is dating both Farouk and Mira, and Farouk and Mira are not dating each other, Farouk and Mira are metamors because they are both beloveds of Betty. Now, some metamor relationships are simply friendly or casual and distant, just amicable, but nothing more. Others are downright mischievous. It's not unusual for metamors to plot together to plan a surprise birthday party for their shared beloved, or to buy each other gifts of appreciation, to be actual friends and go out for coffee together, right? In holding up this sign as Joseph, God's metamor, I cleared the relationship between Joseph and God. I reimagined the narrative. Rather than Joseph being innocuous or a victim or a bystander or a neuter protector, as he is usually thought of in various scriptural contexts, Joseph, as metamor, becomes an equal in his consent and agency and in his support and celebration of the union between Mary and God. A completely different dynamic unfolds in which there is celebratory interdependence, an expanded notion of family and community, and human agency in wholehearted collaboration with the divine. Now, this idea of metamor makes a connection between two people that mainstream culture would otherwise pit against each other. But we need the collaboration and the connection more than we need the competition. It's the connections that make the containers, that foster balance and interdependence. Has anyone seen a starling murmuration? A murmuration is the name given to a flock of starlings, and it is incredible to behold. Now, I'm going to describe it because I know that my example privileges sighted people. But they don't line up like geese or ducks in an orderly V, and they don't swarm like crows. The birds are actually connected in their awareness. Every single bird is connected in its awareness to the 6 birds in its kin's immediate vicinity, above, below, to each side, and in front and behind. This flock flows and ebbs and moves like a giant organism, and each bird flies responsively in connection to the birds that immediately surround it. Even if sections of the flock veer off, it just becomes a smaller version of itself and can seamlessly re-merge with the whole because of this connection. Each bird is an axis. In axis and access. The shifting movements are connected, but they flow and ripple stunningly. It's the opposite of rigidity. So this is the value of being connected and responsive. Watching out for each other, we have the capacity to flow and respond to each other in deeply personal, embodied, and meaningful ways that can only be mimicked or parroted by large-scale structures that require rigidity or predictability or towing the party line in order to control and cohere. Sounds like authoritarianism, doesn't it? I've often said that the smallest unit of human thriving is the community. I am wondering if it is also the largest unit of human thriving. To try to exert influence beyond the community means you're operating without being in relationship with, and that opens you up to all kinds of mess and harm and negative impact. Queering our notion of community, engaging in it more fervently, more intentionally, and reverently could be a kind of redemption that is accessible to each of us in every single moment of connection. Like a starling murmuration, it's unpredictable, but it coheres. Queering religion then starts as a highly localized and deeply embodied experience of us and each other in our own bodies and leads to a religiosity contained and defined by mindfulness of the personal and contained by the cultivation of community. How do we cultivate community? It's hospitality. You think coffee hour was important just because it's got bagels or whatever, cookies? No, it's hospitality. This is why the cultural practice of hospitality in ancient Near East were so vital. Love thy neighbor as thyself. That's one of the highest laws, right, according to the Abrahamic traditions. So the simple acts of hospitality, prioritized and held as absolutely sacred, not only fostered thriving, they provided a container of accountability. That ancient Near East cultural wisdom was, you have to feed and shelter travelers who come to your door for 3 days before you could be allowed to ask them any personal questions. Poet Naomi Shihab Nye writes beautifully about this in her poem, Red Brocade, which starts like this. The Arabs used to say, when a stranger appears at your door, feed him for 3 days before asking who he is, where he's come from, where he's headed. That way, he'll have the strength enough to answer. Or by then, you'll be such good friends, you won't even care. This is the essence of building community, of bending religion to the wisdom of the personal, and that personal that keeps us safer, that keeps us whole, because we are only ever temporarily strangers, and we are all in this together. Blessed be coming to us all. We are going to sing a closing hymn, which, true to form, is a new one that I don't think y'all know, but which Terry and Alexandra have been very game. It's called We Shall Be Known, and it's usually sung by Mom Hughes. So we are going to invite you to join in, but I'm going to sing it once first as a tutorial.
Is it in the